Hey, FCC fans, you could show your pride in a whole new way with the new FCC Visa debit card from First Financial Bank. First Financial is the exclusive banking partner of FCC, and they are just as committed to this club as you and I are. Not only does the card look awesome, but it also gets you discounts on FCC tickets and merch. Find out how to get yours and to see the account terms and conditions at bankatfirst.com/FC Cincinnati. First Financial Bank, member FDIC. Hey, what's happening, CSTers? Welcome to another Monday edition of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. Glad you're with us here tonight. FC Cincinnati losing 7-1 over the weekend to the Loons of Minnesota United. A lot of us did not see 7 goals coming, but actually there was one person in our Growler Cup who did just that. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show as far as the Growler Cup, but we'll also talk about what the heck is going on with FC Cincinnati. How can we fix the orange and blue, hopefully sometime soon here this summer? Of course, we're watching all of the comments on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, so make sure you get in touch with us. You can also tweet at us at Cincy Soccer Talk. You can also email us at feedback@CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. As I welcome in my co-hosts for this week, I'll start off with Rob Pierce. Rob, how are you doing, buddy?
Oh, Subes, I'm just checking out this view from rock bottom here. About 6 months ago, everybody said, stop calling our team Minnesota United. We're not Minnesota United. Well, yeah, that's right. FC Cincinnati is not Minnesota United. They need a telescope to look at Minnesota United right about now. I'm usually a silver lining kind of person, but really the only thing I got out of this is Ledesma's goal. That's kind of something good to talk about, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. We will touch on that a little bit later on in the show. Obviously, getting his first MLS goal, probably the only bright spot in the match over the weekend. But yeah, we'll certainly be touching on that. And we're also welcoming into the show, making his debut as a co-host. He's been on the show before. He called in a couple weeks ago, but he's done a fantastic job talking tactics over at our website at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. We are pleased to welcome in the coach, Brad Gough, to the show. Brad, welcome to CST.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm really happy to be here. Things are not looking good for FC Cincinnati, but looking good for Coach Brad as I get my debut on the pod here.
Absolutely, and you've been crushing it over at the website with your breakdowns, and we're going to be breaking down a lot on this episode of CST, so we're really excited to have you on board, and there was a lot to digest in that 7-1 loss, so let's get right into it, shall we, gents? FC Cincinnati losing over the weekend 7-1. It was a franchise record for goals conceded in a match. I feel like Minnesota right now still scoring on the orange and blue. So Rob, you had a chance to watch the match. What did you make of what you saw in that first half, down 4-0?
I wasn't paying real close attention, but it just it seemed like the first few minutes FC Cincinnati kind of maybe was working on a few different things, and then all of a sudden Minnesota gets a goal, and then they get another and another and another. Amaya did decent. I thought Ledesma did decent, but the rest of it, I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny because Brad Weigel and we're talking about this weekend. They made such a big deal during the offseason about how they studied past expansion teams and how teams that were new to the league, their biggest issue was they conceded a lot of goals. They spent a lot of money on the attack, but they conceded a lot of goals. Well, Coach, I don't see that emphasis being deployed at the moment, or I don't know what the heck is going on, but I did not think that we'd ever see them concede 7 goals here this season.
Yeah, I think outside of Adi constructing the team with a lot of dollars spent on the defensive side of the ball and having however many defensive mids that we brought in to start the season, people naturally assumed that our defense was going to be stout, and we just haven't really seen that. And of course, there's been a lot of upheaval. There's been a lot of injuries, not a lot of stability along the back line, not a lot of guys getting to play together often. And, defense, especially along the back line, it's a process of learning to play with one another. You have to be able to trust your teammate when you're playing pressure cover. You have to be able to pressure the ball and trust that your cover is back there. And it looks like FC Cincinnati doesn't have a clue, much less the ability to trust each other right now.
And a lot's been made. Look, a lot has been made about the fact that Kendall Waston and Alvis Powell have been with Costa Rica and Jamaica in the Gold Cup, right? A lot has been made about Greg Garza and his inability to stay healthy for this club. Now, we when the deal was made for Greg Garza, we knew the injury history, right? We wondered how much time we would actually see him out on the field this year. How much has that had an effect on what is happening with this defense right now, Brad?
I think it's actually had a more of a profound effect than we realize, because I think that Garza's absence has created a domino effect where we've seen with Powell underperforming and then being gone for the Gold Cup. We've seen the foot speed on Cincinnati's back line just absolutely plummet. I mean, Waston, Hagland, Lasso, we're never going to be fleet of foot center backs, but they can get the job done if they have some outside backs alongside of them with some speed. But when Deplon is the fastest guy you have along the outside back, or Justin Hoyt at 30-something years old, then teams are going to be able to just dribble right at you all the time, just run at you. And we've seen FC Cincinnati just backing off constantly in the midfield, afraid to get too tight to any of the attackers, because I think the defenders know that the attackers on the other team can just run by them. They're just faster.
Well, we did see a first this weekend, gentlemen, believe it or not. We saw Matthew Deplon sit out for a few minutes for the Orange and Blue. First time he was subbed out in a match. First minutes of the season that he has missed, Rob. Again, he's played a lot of minutes, and we're not pinpointing any blame specifically on him. As a whole, this unit has faltered. 42 goals conceded. That comes to 2.3 goals per game that they're giving up. And you're just not going to win ball games giving up over 2 goals a game.
Yeah, Deplon had to have been gassed. He's, like you said, he's played every minute up until Saturday. So I certainly, don't blame them all for needing a rest. Brad brought up an interesting point about cohesion in the back line. I think that's something to look at. I mean, you got Garza going in and out. You got Powell's hurt. You got a little bit of rotation with Deplon and Hagland and Lasso, so they really didn't have a chance to quite gel together. I'm just wondering, though. I'm just wondering if they planned for this. We had an internal discussion before the season started, and we kind of knew that this was going to be a key moment in the schedule where you were going to be without a Waston, without a Cruz and Powell and Maddox. And so, I mean, if they didn't plan for this, they weren't doing their job.
Thoughts on that, Brad?
Yeah, I think along with that, planning for Garza's injury history. I mean, when you only have one true left back on the team, right? Garza's our only actual left back. I suppose the front office knew Deplon could fill in a pinch, but in Deplon's career, he's had a few starts at center back, a load of starts at right back, and I think the first time he's played left back in his career is at Cincinnati. So just not even having any other depth on the team in terms of left back shows a lack of planning. And then to have so many of your starters be Gold Cup players, all slated to miss at the same time, I don't know if they thought that maybe more of the USL guys would be able to step up or what, but it's hard to see that there was really any foresight in that regard.
Now, let's be fair. The goals that Minnesota scored there were some beauties, right? I mean, it wasn't all, complete breakdowns by FC Cincinnati. I mean, some of those goals were terrific, right? So you have to chalk it up to Minnesota. They're playing well, but you also think now every team in this league, they see what's going on with the Orange and Blue, right? I mean, they know they can get after the Orange and Blue and just pepper the goal. We'll talk a little bit later on about how to fix this. I want to go back to something we've seen over the last few weeks, and that is we've seen Justin Hoyt play a little center back. We saw him play, I guess, ahead of Nick Hagland when Waston was here, right? You look back, I mean, hindsight clearly 2020 here, gents, but I mean, what do they do now? How do you fix this?
I think some of it's going to come with time, as much as nobody wants to hear it, and we're definitely not going to use the trust the P word, the evil P word that we've heard over and over. But it takes time playing alongside a player, especially along the back line. Like I said before, you have to trust that that guy behind you is going to be where he is. When you're a center back, knowing when to drop, knowing when to pull, to compress the field, to pull players offside, you have to trust that your team is on the same page. And right now, that trust doesn't exist. So low confidence and just low minutes as a unit. I think those are the things that have to be solved. But certainly a player acquisition, somebody that could come in and be a little more stable back there in terms of just minutes played, could help quite a bit.
I just feel like too, Rob, we're beating a dead horse here, right? I mean, I don't know how many more weeks we can continue to say, up the defense, up the defense, up. You know, at some point, it'd be nice to talk about something different, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the defense isn't the only weakness right now. I mean, they're not scoring goals either. So that would be something nice. Kind of getting a little ahead of myself here, but I'd like to see them do something with the striker position in the transfer window coming up.
Wouldn't we all? Wouldn't we all? Yeah. There's a lot of questions, a lot of head scratching, and I think a lot of folks who had some high hopes, particularly fans of the club, had some high hopes, thinking that a playoff spot was a realistic chance. Even some staff members here at CST thought the playoffs were realistic. There's the reason why I'm wearing my black CST polo tonight, folks, because this season's done. It's DE dead. I just don't know. First of all, they got to get a coach, right? I mean, we have no idea what's going on there. They could bring in a coach wants to do something completely different than what Yo has been doing the last few weeks. They finally got the GM in, but at some point we got to get a coach. And I mean, he's probably going to he's stepping into this, Brad, thinking, so we got to get some players, right? So if there's one position that you had to really pinpoint that they absolutely have to address here in the transfer window here in a few weeks, what position would that be?
Personally, I would stick along the back line. I mean, certainly a ball playing center back would help with this ability to play out of the back that we've seen Yo want to employ. But I would stick at that left back position. We need an outside back. I would try to. Garza still has value on the market. If we could swap him out with someone that is going to be reliable, that's going to play a lot of minutes, I think that could really settle things down. In my opinion, I think Deplan is really suited to the center back position in terms of how we want to play with a possession-oriented approach. We've seen how solid he is positionally. I think if you can get a Waston-Deplan combo in the back, you get a new left back that with some speed going forward. I think you throw Powell out there and just let him sink or swim. And I also think having a left back that has a little more versatility going forward would allow us to play three at the back if we wanted to, and have a Waston, Haglund, Deplan back three. And I think that could also just try something different.
Three at the back. Where have we heard that before, Rob?
You know what? I think they should sign another defensive midfielder. That'll fix everything. No, I say striker. Since May 19th, FC Cincinnati has scored 2 goals on its own, not counting the 2 that NYCFC scored for them, in the last 5 league matches. And it was last week I was saying that Audi was the player that I'd like to see improve in the second half. But maybe there are some teams out there that see his woes and say, well, we can do better with him than FC Cincinnati did. And if that's the case, then yeah, you dump off his salary on someone who's just willing to take it and call it a day and pick up somebody else and build towards next year.
So, Brad, you just chalk that up to, look, this was a gamble that they made last year in hopes of bringing home a USL championship. Didn't pan out. Clearly is not panning out this year. First of all, does he still have value? Do you think FC Cincinnati could get something for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. I do think that there are franchises out there that like to buy depreciated assets and rehabilitate them. You know, think of the New England Patriots model in the NFL. There's MLS teams that like to do that too. We've seen recently Sporting Kansas City brought back a midfielder that they had dealt a while ago in order to, they got him depreciated. They decided that they can do a better job with him. So I think somebody wants a guy who has his goal scoring track record. He hasn't scored for us. I don't think that ship is completely sailed. I don't think Adi's a completely lost cause, but it has done a lot of damage to his reputation in this city, just with the perceived lack of work ethic, and just the amount of money we're paying for what we're getting in return in terms of goals. So I don't know if he can repair that with the fans or not, but I would venture to think that if he could get rolling and finish the back end of the season with 5 to 7 goals, which is a big if, I think that he has some value still even here.
Now, a lot of blame is going to be put on Adi. Again, I feel like this is something we repeat each and every week here on the show. But how much of that is due to him not getting service? How much of that is due to the system? Is this something that he could turn around? Is it something that the coaching staff can turn around, or even a new coach could turn around?
I believe so. It's going to take a multi-pronged approach, right? Adi, we've seen, he's not the kind of forward that you want to get the ball to in transition and let him dribble at opponents. He needs service inside the box. He needs to have the ball with one defender pinned on his back and look to turn and have a shot. He needs headers. He needs one-touch shots from low-driven crosses. And right now, we haven't seen FC Cincinnati with any system to speak of. One match will have 20 crosses and a low number of passes in the final third. The next match will have 60% possession and only 2 or 3 crosses, but very few shots on goal. We haven't seen anything in terms of a system. And I do think whoever comes in as coach is going to have a lot to say about that, because Adi is a very particular kind of striker. You're not going to play the same way with Adi as you would with a Maddox. You're not going to play the same way with a Joseph Martinez as you would with a Josie Altidore. They're different kinds of players. So how the next coach wants to play is going to go a long way into saying if Adi has life on this roster, or if he's going to end up on the trash heap of FC Cincinnati stars that will look back on someday and say, man, can you believe he played for us?
Yeah, maybe. Well, let's talk a little bit about one guy who we will be getting back here very shortly, right? We know about Kendall Waston, but Alan Cruz. And Rob, I think he's one of those guys that we don't mention enough of how much I think he really is missed. His absence in the midfield, whether it's out wide or even centrally, which I think all of us would agree after watching it for Costa Rica in that Mexico match, and even the rest of the Gold Cup, you're thinking to yourself, we've got to find a way to get him in the middle of the park rather than, I don't want to say wasting his talents out wide, but he just feels like he plays his best when he's in the middle of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think Cruz should play centrally, as most of us do, but it would allow him to be a little more creative than he can be out on the wing, and unlock a few features. And that could very well be one of the things that FC Cincinnati has missed in the last couple of weeks.
And getting him back, Brad, and moving him central could almost serve that's almost like a transfer that you're bringing in a new player.
I was absolutely thinking the same thing. I think right now you're relying on Cruz on the wing because he works hard and tracks back. And that is a great asset to have on the wing. But if you're playing a guy in a position just for his defensive tracking ability, you're wasting a lot of his talents. He is so good at moving the ball quickly, playing the ball to feet, picking intricate passes. And I think having him and Amaya in there starting to build that partnership and say, hey, this is our future. We're going to turn over this roster a lot this offseason. So let's get these pieces playing where they should be playing and look to start to build these partnerships. And it won't just be for next year, because we'll start to see dividends right away. I say Alan Cruz as a central midfielder is our new young DP signing, starting as soon as possible.
Right, no kidding. Do you see him more as a 6 or more like an 8?
I think he's more suited to the 8 in terms of how he plays. But if you play him as a 6 and a double pivot, so he's going to naturally hang back, but he's going to have license to go forward. I think a guy like Ulloa is really good in that role as an 8 and a double pivot because he understands the flow of the game. And I think getting him and Cruz playing together and having Ulloa be able to rotate in behind as Cruz goes forward could really suit him as well, because Cruz works so hard. Even when he gets forward, he's going to get back in time to thwart a lot of the offensive transitions as well.
Yeah, and that leaves a guy like a Leo Bertone, who I thought was going to have a really big impact, and it just hasn't materialized with him for whatever reason, whether that's style or formation or what. Maybe he's somebody you could move, Rob, that could potentially give you some allocation money that maybe you could go spend elsewhere.
Yeah, he's definitely got the resume that teams might want. That was, I would assume, one of the big reasons why FC Cincinnati wanted him. So yeah, you could move him and free up some money, perhaps, for sure.
But that's the big question: is will they move anybody, or will they be able to bring anybody in? And I think it comes back to this: until they get a head coach, it's hard to make any kind of player moves and acquisitions or what, because you have no direction. How important is it right now? I mean, obviously we know that Yohan Demey has done the best he can in a tricky situation, right? Got thrown in, not an ideal situation, knowing that half of his guys are going to be gone for the Gold Cup during the summer, and some important players for him. How important now, after seeing what we've seen the last few weeks on the field, how important is it to get somebody in? I mean, tomorrow would be nice, Brad, but it just feels like, just watching the team, they lack a little bit of direction. They lack a little motivation.
Yeah, I think first things first, any of our players that have value on the market have value for a reason. It's
Sure.
because they have something to offer. We can't just get rid of these guys because they have value and we need to dump salary. These guys might have value to the next coach. So first things first, to have an effective transfer window, we have to have a guy in with direction. Unless that's night camp, then maybe he is making those decisions. But then having that new coach bounce that you hear so much about, I think that's a really important thing, because the guys in the locker room want to have somebody to play for. And I'm not saying they're not playing for Yo, but every guy in there knows that Yo is not getting that job. As much as we all would think, oh, he's going to have a chance, he'll put his resume in, he'll send in his CV to Carl, and we'll see if he gets the gig. He's young. We know that he has not had success in a situation that, frankly, he really didn't have an opportunity to have success in. So every guy in that locker room knows that he's not the future coach. So having a guy in there that they know that they have to win over with their play on the field, with their work ethic and practice, would make a huge difference right off the bat.
Yeah. I mean, conceding 7 goals over the weekend, Rob, I mean, it just felt like nobody was, and it's easy for me to sit here and say that. But, when you concede 7 goals, I know it's hot. I know there's a lot of guys missing. And a lot of people are working hard. I don't want to downplay that, right? But just watching it, I don't know, man. I just didn't think I would see that this quickly in year one.
Yeah. I think it was hard to play at the end. Perhaps it's hot. You're down 5-1, 6-1. I did
Nothing's going their way.
Right. I did see a few guys tracking back a little slow, which kind of didn't sit well with me at first. But I guess I can see it with the conditions and everything like that. I mean, I'm sure it was just as miserable for them as it was for us.
So let's give a little bit of props, right? I mean, look, this not an easy. They're dealing with a lot, right? So we saw Ledesma get his first goal in Major League Soccer. And it was a really well-taken goal, Rob.
Yeah, it was. I'm not recalling footage of it exactly, but I do remember that when it went in, I was thinking, boy, there's a little bit of relief for somebody who was the the MVP last year for the club, and he was my most improved player, as I mentioned on the show last week, and so he's just kind of starting to get his feel a little bit more and a little bit more every week, it seems like.
Is he one of those guys, too, Rob or Brad, that you thought you would maybe we weren't expecting to see a whole lot from him this year because it was making the jump. He was making the jump from USL to Major League Soccer, but I mean he's really been forced into being that creative player in this attack.
Yeah, I mean, he has the tools to be successful at the MLS level, but I don't think he's ever meant to be a piece upon which the offense is built. I think he has some set piece ability, though we haven't seen that a ton of late. He's got the creativity. He's got the ability to make really nice, decisive, and creative runs. For his goal, we saw him lead the defender away from the ball by cutting towards the goal and then cutting inside of him and totally freeing himself up. He has the tools to do that sort of thing, but I think right now, every guy in that attack is shouldering a ton of pressure because everyone feels like if somebody's going to score, it has to be them, and they have to do it alone because nothing is going right for the offense right now.
One other bright spot, I guess you can say, is draftee Tommy McCabe made his MLS debut this weekend as well. He was recently recalled on loan, so it's good to see him get some minutes from the short spell that you saw of McCabe. Brad, how do you think he did?
I mean, it's hard to tell. It was a very short time, and so many guys around him were playing with their eyes squarely down at their feet by that point. Still playing hard, but just demoralized. I didn't see anything that made me think he didn't belong, which is about all you'd hope for in that sort of appearance, I think, from the youngster.
So he makes his debut. Ledesma gets the goal, and that's pretty much it for the positives. So let's take a look now, and I'm going to pose this question to both of you. What record do you expect from here on out? I made the joke on Twitter over the weekend that, last year FC Cincinnati went May to October without losing a match. And they may go May to October this year without winning one. Correct me if I'm wrong. No, I can't say that because they did win a match in May, but you know what I mean, right? They did beat Montreal in May, but you know what I mean here, gents. So realistically, your expectations, what kind of record do you think you will see the rest of the way for the Orange and Blue? I'll start with you, Rob.
All right, so right now, FC Cincinnati is 3-13-2 with 11 points. I'm looking at the rest of the season, and I see 4 more matches where they could get points of some kind. You got the home games against the Revs, the Crew, Orlando, and Vancouver. I've got the other 12 matches that are left as losses. So that's a maximum of 12 points remaining. I'd say if they get 8 points, 2 wins and 2 draws, that's realistic. So that ends at 5, 25, and 4 with 19 points.
Ouch. Yeah, and I would say this. Things aren't looking great in Columbus either, so we've got that going for us. That should be a doozy of a Hell is Real derby. No question about that. I agree with you. Those 4 opponents probably – and even New England might be a stretch now. They've turned the corner with Bruce Arena, Brad.
Yeah, and they've got some really good players. I would venture to say, like a Carlos Heel would be the star on day one if he were to come to Cincinnati. And those are the kinds of players that give Cincinnati problems, the guys that are quick and that can dribble. But I'm a little bit with Rob. I think that if the realistic expectation is maybe 2 wins and a draw, I look at possible home to New England. I think both Hell is Real derby matches we have a chance at, because in derby matches you throw everything out the window,
sure,
as they say. And I think home to Vancouver could get a result, maybe only a draw there, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But the one thing we have to remember is that things can change quickly in the MLS. And I'm not saying we're going to go make the playoffs, not even close. But if we get on a bit of a roll, we have that end of the season stretch where we have a bunch of home matches in a row. We might be looking back and sitting on 24 or 25 points. Our own Ken Hetker is predicting 24 points. And I would love to see that math because I don't see where it's coming from. But I'm going to trust Ken on this one. And I'm going to say 24 points.
Yeah, Ken's our math guru. You're the tactics guy. Ken's our math guy. I don't see where the 24 points are coming from either. I will say this. I agree with you 100%, though, about the Hell is Real derby matches. Columbus, obviously, they're missing their best goalkeeper left. Higuain out for the year with an ACL injury. So there is some hope that you might be able to pick up 6 points there. I still don't see it personally. So I don't know. I don't think 24 points is going to happen. I think that's a stretch. I think unless they can really address some things with the transfer window, which I guess is not out of the realm of possibility. And if you think back to a year ago, I mean, DC United was sitting pretty much in this position until Wayne Rooney came along. Now, before you send the hate mail to me, I am not saying that we are DC United and we are not going to get a Wayne Rooney type player. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that crazier things have happened in Major League Soccer. Trying to see the silver lining here, trying to be a little bit of positive because it's been so negative over the past couple of months. If they can bring in the right players, and I mean, are they going to bring in 10 new players? No. But if they can bring in 3 or 4 that can make an impact, there are some pieces on this roster that could complement that. So I don't want to sit here and just be negative all the time. So I'm going to try to I'm just going to try to be positive, right? I'm just tired of all the negativity.
I also think that one signing in a key position could lead to 2 or 3 better pieces. We talked about, we sign a right wing and we move Cruz centrally. That's one signing that makes 2 spots on the field a lot better because you're going to get more from a natural winger in terms of going forward than you're getting from Cruz. And you're going to get more from central midfield as one of probably your best central midfielder actually playing in central midfield. A left back is going to allow Deplan to shift over to the right, which makes both fullback spots better, or play center back. So you have a chance for a domino effect. You make 1 or 2 signings in the right spots, and a lot could change, I think, for this team. Again, I'm with you, Subs. I'm not expecting it, but I think there's cause to hope. I mean, if you can't hope during the summer transfer window as an FC Cincinnati fan, then you might as well just fold up your scarves and put them in storage until next year.
You mentioned that domino effect, right? If they can add that piece, someone on the right wing, maybe a left back, maybe they start to get some better service into the box for one Fernando Adi, Rob. You see where I'm going here?
Yeah, that's a definite possibility. That's very true. Dominoes could very well be falling, and like Brad said, I mean, they're not going to jump into the playoffs all of a sudden, but I mean, they could, maybe hopefully get out of last.
Yeah, we're trying to be positive here, folks. All right, I like it. We dig the positivity. I want to know what you think, though. Make sure you email us feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Let us know what positions you want to see addressed in the transfer window and how you would fix FC Cincinnati. All right, it's that time of the show, and believe it or not, it's the first week of the month, and that means we give a big shout-out and thanks to our tremendous supporters. We're going to shout out each and every one of you. So big shout-out and thanks to Kingshammer and Tim Bronsel, Matt Adamczyk, Brian Malone, Jamie Smed, Jonas Tom, Jack Emery, Mike Bowman, Kathleen Francis, Teresa Everidge, Matt Imholt, Matthew Long, Joe Coling, and Tara Mullins, John Davidson, Patrick Lonnie, Dave Tingler, Alex Yersky. Alex Yersky, by the way, sang the national anthem over the weekend at the Dutch Lions game, which I'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show as well. He did a great job with that. Claire Hughes, Carl Feit, Scott Griffith, Josh Leese, Kevin Johnston, Greg Harrell, Jack Doyle, Doug Ross, James Denbo, the Cincy Superfan Tom Grabo, Tim and Tina Harris, Chris Howard, Sarah Spriggs, Paul Hecker, Michael Winland, Mattis Brumbach, Courtney Rice, Scott Party, Joe Collier, Richard Rolson, Christina Sharma, Nate Hale, Brandon Jones, Adam Alexander, Chima John, Mike Berryman, Andy Rosen, Jeff Egan, Joseph Wells, Becky and Matt Ryan, Stephen Puckeridge, Gary Randolph, AJ Stork, Alec Mackey, Jamie Lay, Angela Cardwell, Anthony Zawoski, Scott Kaplan, Colin Rink, Jason DeBrewer, Robert Finley, Scott Wilson, Stephen Haldeman, Wesley Jackson, Dave Dorsey, Corey Finneran, Nick Roth, Austin Spiker, Brad Baker, Mitch Autry, and last but not least, Matt Weirman, Chris Hubbard, Michael Mutchler, Brian Homan, Troy Reinemeyer, Alex Naughton, Mark Neuenschwander. I tried to say the way Bill did the other week. Mark, I apologize. Stephen Brashear, Mike Hudson, he sucks, and Brian Newton. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We really do appreciate your generosity. To learn more on how you can help out the show, head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/support. Well, how about the ladies, right? They are just kicking butt over in France in the Women's World Cup. Another big win over the French. It was a 2-1 win. It got a little scary there at the end. I felt like it probably should have been 3-0. VAR was not on our side. But Megan Rapinoe just continuing to ball out over in France and doing a wonderful job for the women. They will now advance to tomorrow's semifinal with England. What have you made of the Women's World Cup so far and the run that they've made so far, Brad? I mean, the women are playing fantastic.
Man, I love watching those women play. Just the tactical nuance that they show in their game, the athleticism, running at defenders, and above all, the confidence. I mean, seeing Pino go at defenders and the way she celebrates goals gives us FC Cincinnati fans a little something to smile about, because, hey, on those days we can all be Americans. We can all root for them.
Yeah, I mean, they're fantastic to watch. They have just, France was a favorite. I mean, they were playing really well, and Crystal Dunn playing left back, she was fantastic. I thought, obviously Rapinoe played well also, but the women, Rob, I mean, they've been kicking butt.
Yeah.
That's no surprise, right? I mean, they've been doing it for years.
Right. I haven't been able to catch much of the World Cup because it's always on when I'm at work, and it's.
You mean you don't watch YouTube TV at work? Come on, Rob.
I can't using a government computer.
What they don't know can't hurt them, right?
But I did catch the last 10 minutes in stoppage time after work on Friday, and I saw France was working on that equalizer, and then so that was a little scary. You kind of held your breath there for a little bit. And then the U.S. got smart in stoppage time and just ran the clock out. But I'll tell you what, behind Rose Lavelle, of course, Rapinoe is my favorite U.S. player. There's two reasons for that, but to keep things on topic, I won't go into the second reason.
Oh, okay. Oh, I think I know where you're going there. We quickly move on. Yeah, I mean, she's playing really well, right? But you know who else is playing really well, Brad? And that's England. I mean, they've done really well so far in their run-up. They're going to be they're not an easy foe, and obviously the Americans have struggled with them the last couple of years. But my guy Phil Neville from the class of '92, doing a pretty good job, head coach of the Lionesses. But it's going to be a tough task for the women.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, against France, we saw them pull out a victory when some of their best players didn't have great games. I think Sam Mewis did not play well against France, and in my opinion, she's been their best player of the tournament. She's passing and her movement. Alex Morgan, Rose Lavelle, none of them had great games against France, so they're really going to have to show up against England. England's defense is really good. They have two center backs. And obviously Lucy Bronze, their right back, all really talented players. And in my mind, I know, Subs, you love you some Phil Neville, but I think you could dub this the battle of the question mark coaches, because for all the success both of these coaches have had, people still constantly question Jill Ellis and her decisions she makes. And same with Phil Neville. A lot of people are saying that the Lionesses are winning despite him at the helm.
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I mean, Ellis has won, 11 straight World Cup games. I mean, a lot of people question her decisions, but I would think that it's paying off. I mean, they're in a semifinal. I think, they've conceded 2 goals all tournament. Obviously, there's some question marks there at center mid, but you're right. I didn't think Rose Lavelle played very well the other night. I thought Mewes was also off. But, look who they bring on. They bring on Carly Lloyd and, was it Horan?
Yep.
Who's arguably one of the best center midfielders in the women's game. And to bring them off the bench, I mean, that's remarkable.
I think that's one of the reasons why Ellis gets so many questions is the U.S. is probably the deepest squad there is in this tournament, and maybe all of international soccer, much less women's international soccer. And yet people don't think she uses her substitutions effectively. Now, I would say if I'm her, I'm laughing all the way to the bank. I will go win my second World Cup trophy in a row,
hopefully
re-up that contract, and let people question me all they want.
Yeah. she's doing a really good job. I mean, you can't argue with the results, right? I mean, I think with the results they've been getting, we would kill for that on the men's side, right? I mean, they've just been. And I know it's a different game and whatnot, but yeah, she's doing really well. So they face a tough test in England. If they win on Tuesday, they will then move on to the final, which would be either against Sweden, who they've already beaten here in this tournament, or the Netherlands, another team that is playing some really, really good football right now. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. Hopefully the women can get it done Tuesday against England. Speaking of getting it done, the American men last night against Curacao struggled against Curacao. And let's be fair here, gents. I mean, if this were Mexico or if this were Costa Rica, or I would even argue even if this was Jamaica, do we really think this game is 1-0? I mean, I can't believe that the Americans didn't do more against Curacao. And it's no slight to Curacao. You have to give them credit. They came in, they played well. They basically made the Americans second best on the field. I mean, I didn't see anything promising from the red, white, and blue there, but I guess you survive in advance at this point. Now the Americans will take on Jamaica in the semifinal, but last night was pretty disappointing, Rob.
You know, I watched the first half, and of course, you know me with my early bedtime, so I went to bed at halftime. But to start with, like in the first, I don't know, I want to say 10, 15 minutes, the U.S. looked pretty decent, actually, I thought. Some movement, some good sequences, and that Pulisic to McKinney header, well, that was spectacular. But then we saw Curacao just kind of turn it on a little bit, and you kind of got the feeling that they were just as likely to equalize as the United States was to get a second goal, if not more so that they could equalize. So I'm not exactly sure what happened in the second half, but I get the feeling that it wasn't all that great to watch.
Yeah. So what do you make? Obviously, Greg Berhalter making a lot of changes, a lot of questions about this roster heading into the tournament, Brad. What did you make of the performance last night, and where can you see the red, white, and blue improve?
Man, well, Rob, I'll tell you what happened in the second half. The U.S. men were outpossessed, outcreated, outworked. They didn't have a lot of business winning that game. But I'll tell you what, where we really still showed that we're a better team than Curacao is in just the moments of individual brilliance. A lot of teams in CONCACAF, Mexico aside, can't run out a guy like Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie. We have some guys on this roster that can make the difference individually. Collectively, we were not the better team, but we had the better individual players. I think the defense played pretty well. I think that Greg Berhalter trying to institute this system where he has to have a center forward who can do very specific things, but playing with a center forward in Giazzi Zardes who can't do those things. He's not a hold-up player. He can't really distribute when you put the ball into his feet. He's a guy who, when Berhalter coached him at Columbus, their mode of operating was try to not let Giazzi touch the ball until he's inside the 18 and then just let him score goals. And that's what Giazzi's good at. So I think right now it's a question of whether 3G is trying to push his system on a set of players who can't play it, or if as players like Josie Altidore get back to health, if this system really is going to lead the red, white, and blue to victory. And I think the match against Jamaica is going to go a long way to telling us that.
I mean, just when you watched the other night, Mexico, Costa Rica, just watching that match, and you're thinking, I know I was, I don't know what you guys were thinking, but I was thinking to myself, the United States at this point are third or fourth best in this region, just from watching just the sheer eye test, right? I mean, that match, Mexico and Costa Rica, was well played. Obviously, there was some controversy with the penalty call for Costa Rica, but I mean that match was fun to watch, highly skilled, great technical ability by both sides, and you're just thinking to yourself, wow, I don't know how the Americans get by either one of these sides, Rob.
Yeah, I was watching that game kind of off and on, and the periods that I was watching, I didn't want to turn away because, like you said, it's a very compelling matchup. I think Jamaica could They could be a test, and then you got Mexico after that. So it's really hard to say.
You never know. The Haitians, they may be able to beat Mexico. You just never know. The Gold Cup's always crazy. But look, I think it's pretty safe to say we're going to go ahead and slot Mexico into this final, Brad. If the Americans can somehow get by Jamaica, which history has shown they haven't been able to in the Gold Cup, do they have a chance against the Mexicans?
I mean, it's tough to say. You can't, with any confidence, predict a U.S. win. The game plan would have to be different, right? You're going to have to let Mexico have some of the ball and look to hit on the counter. The difference being, Curacao had most of the ball the other night, but that's not what the U.S. wanted. The U.S. was not set up to defend that way. We simply could not get pressure in the center of the park on the Curacao players in possession. So 3G is going to have a different game plan against Mexico. In terms of the U.S. being the third or fourth best team in CONCACAF, I think we have to remember that we have a load of players missing. So when it comes time for the next World Cup cycle, kicking up again here soon, you're talking about important players. Like, obviously you have Tyler Adams, but don't forget about John Brooks, DeAndre Yedlin. Josie Altidore is not fit. So I think, similar to FC Cincinnati, you hope that reinforcements arrive and that the team continues to improve. The difference with FC Cincinnati is the U.S. has a coach and a direction. We're just not sure whether that direction is going to fit yet.
Sure. There's a name you didn't mention, Tim Weah. I think he's another guy. He's young, just got done playing for the U20s in the U20 World Cup this summer for Tab Ramos, who, spoiler alert, might be one of those candidates for the FC Cincinnati head coaching job. You just never know. But he's a name that I think that'd be really nice if they could have him right now. And by the way, Tyler Boyd, who they brought in, who just made the switch from New Zealand, has been refreshing to watch. I mean, he's been fantastic. Didn't have his best game last night against Curacao, but he's been a guy who, with limited minutes, very, very limited minutes in the U.S. system under 3G, and has kind of thrived.
Yeah, breath of fresh air.
Absolutely. Some speed, some guile, some ability to take defenders on 1v1. It's well said.
So Joe in the chat room wants to know if we can get Tyler Boyd here. Believe it or not, the discovery rights of Tyler Boyd are owned by Inter Miami down in that squad that hasn't been constructed yet. So I thought the same thing, Joe. That would be really nice if we could add him, a right winger, could provide some pace, some attacking flair. Can we all dream? Yeah, we'll see. But look, the men. We, as much as we sit here and say they played poorly against Curacao, they have yet to lose in the Gold Cup. Can they get it together against a really strong Jamaica side who advanced over the weekend? They knocked off Panama, and the lone goal coming from Maddox, who continues his stay, which means he is further away from returning to FC Cincinnati. And he scored the penalty kick against Panama. It sure would be nice to have him back scoring some penalty kicks for us. And he's another one of those guys who, as much as we say, we slide him in the offseason about bringing him in, but man, we could really use his pace. Give some of these guys a break up top.
Yeah, have him play as a second forward and a two-striker set. Have him come in the last 25, 30 minutes of a game when the defense is tired. I say let's all come on, you USMNT, and bring our boys Powell and Maddox back home to us here.
Yes, I think we all echo those sentiments, Brad. Absolutely. But hopefully the men can get a win over Jamaica and get a chance to play in that final coming up. Probably against Mexico, but you never know. We can all root for Haiti in that one, just like we were all rooting, even though we wanted Waston and Cruz to come back. I think we were all secretly hoping that they would extend their stay a little bit to knock off Mexico in the Gold Cup. Wasn't meant to be, but that was a fun match to watch, no doubt about it.
I will say, Subs, sorry. I will say that the U.S. against Jamaica really suits the U.S. better than Curacao. Curacao wanted to have the ball. Jamaica's not going to want to have the ball. Michael Bradley is over the hill as a defensive midfielder, but he is right in his prime in terms of a number 6 playmaker. When he is on the ball, spraying passes left to right, he looks really good. And I think that this match will suit him better as that midfield maestro, and hopefully that'll show.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamaica's clearly they're going to use their athletic ability and try to hit us on the counter and let us make the mistakes. When I say us, I mean the U.S. men. I'm not out there playing soccer, thankfully. It's too hot for that right now. Speaking of hot, we've got March to Match Day coming up this week. Our own Boston Razzle Dazzle Brazzle, he's off somewhere in the Caribbean on a cruise, on vacation. Shocker, right? That's why we call him Mr. PTO. So Brad Weigel will be man in the fort. I think, Brad, you're also going to be taking part in this week's March to Match Day, too. So you're doubling up.
Yeah, I just thought if I can do it once, I'll just do it twice. There's no crossover in listenership, right? I'm just going to repeat all the same things I said here.
Yeah, absolutely. No. So that'll be a fun one this week as we preview the match against the Houston Dynamo. We're going to be joined by Albie Shore from the Dynamo Theory blog to talk about the upcoming match against Houston, which I believe is Americana night. So there'll be fireworks at the match afterwards. So that'll be fun. And, of course, speaking of fireworks, you won't want to miss the 4th annual CST Foot Golf Classic, sponsored by Joseph Auto Group. It's a great fundraiser we do every year for sports games for kids. The Cincy superfan Tom Grabo does a great job with that charity. So make sure you get registered. Coming up August 24th at Woodland Golf Course, $180 gets you into the event for your foursome. Get you 18 holes of golf. And, of course, we're going to have all kinds of prizes and whatnot. It's going to be a good time. Head on over to CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/footgolf to take part. Because coming up here in a month, on August 1st, that rate is going to go up to $200. So get in while you can for the 180 while we've got some spots open. So we want to see you out there. We got to get some folks involved from the Northern Kentucky Soccer Academy, Brad. You want to take part?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to pitch that to the other directors and see if we can't send some teams over.
We got some ringers, folks. Brian Weigel, I know Brian Weigel likes to bring his ringers too. So that should be a fun one. Again, CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com/footgolf to get your foursome registered. Time to wrap things up. Man, that hour flew by, gents. That went really quickly. Final thoughts, Rob Pierce. Rob, thank you so much for being on the show this week.
You're quite welcome. I guess for my final thought, I'll just say, just hang in there. It's tough right now to be an FC Cincinnati fan. You know, it just sucks right now. But if this is rock bottom, then there's only one way to go, and that's up. So keep your eyes on what the club does in the next month. The summer transfer window opens next week, and I'm very curious to see what moves are made. We knew this year would be rough, maybe not quite this rough, but I'm looking a couple of years down the road to when the stadium opens in 2021 and sending kind of good vibes that maybe they can be competitive by then, which is why I hope to see people like Daly and Gadula and McCabe and maybe even Jimmy Haig get some minutes. Let's just see what these guys have. I mean, we saw it with Amaya, so let's see some of these other draft picks and see what they got.
Good stuff, Rob, as always. Appreciate all that you do, not just for the podcast, but for the website as well.
Absolutely. Love to do it.
And final thoughts from Brad Gough. Brad, you survived your first episode of CST. We had a little bit of a little technical hiccup there before the show. We were wondering if we were going to get you on, but it worked out. You sound great. You look great. And we appreciate you being on the show, bud.
Yeah, I am here. Hopefully the first of many. For my final thoughts, I want to say that, I am a little bit less than proud to say that I have coached many teams that have won very few games across the course of a season. And when you're in the midst of losing streaks and you're struggling, the important thing in the locker room is to tell your players that, look, your goals do not have to revolve around winning and losing. FC Cincinnati fans, forget about wins and losses right away. If wins come, we'll cheer, but let's not cry too hard over the losses. And like Rob said, we're going to hang in there. Let's set incremental goals. Let's look. Are we starting to see better possession? Are we starting to see some better relationships along the back line? Obviously, we just lost 7-1, so nowhere to go but up from here. Just like Rob said, rock bottom. But let's quit worrying about the playoffs, quit worrying about wins and losses, and let's just see steps in the right direction heading into 2020.
Well said, Brad. Well said. I want to say congratulations. You're doing a great job with the talking tactics pieces. Talk a little bit about what you got in the hopper for the website.
Yeah, so obviously every match I sit down, I watch the game film and try to pull out some key moments. If there's a few goals, not like 7, I can break down each goal and kind of look from a coach's perspective. If I'm in the film room the next day, who am I talking to? What did they do wrong? How can we change things? But I also like to pick out bigger themes. So if you have any ideas, shoot them over to Subs. Feedback at CincinnatiSoccerTalk.com. Did I get that right?
He's so good, folks. Look at that. He is so smooth. He's been here one night, and he already knows the email address. Well done, Brad.
Thank you.
My final thoughts. I had the pleasure this week. Now, as much as I rib Boston for going out of the country as much as he does, or for rollerblading, or for watching Big Brother, I am super thankful he actually went on vacation this week, and there's a good reason for that. Because he left, I had the pleasure of being the play-by-play voice over the weekend for the home finale for the Cincinnati Dutch Lions game, and I had an absolute blast. Me and Chris Asbrock brought you the game. We hope you enjoyed it. It was the home finale. The Dutch Lions set a franchise record for attendance for a single game that night. Brandon Ponchak is the general manager, and he's also an assistant coach as well. I had a chance to catch up with him and finally meet him face-to-face over the weekend. And I just want to say thank you to the Dutch Lions for allowing me the opportunity to fulfill a lifelong dream of broadcasting a soccer match. I don't get that opportunity very often. I called one soccer game a couple years ago for high school. That was my first time. But last night, there on the campus of Northern Kentucky University, I had the pleasure of calling a really, really fun match between the Dutch Lions and Flint City, which, by the way, Dutch Lions now have jumped into that second playoff spot in their conference standing. So they control their own destiny with 2 matches left. They actually can make the postseason. They've got, they could actually maybe even leapfrog the top of the table there. I don't know if it'll happen, but they're playing really well. And so a lot of props to Paul Nicholson and what he's doing there. Last night, the Dutch Lions, they scored 3 goals without their leading goal scorer in the match. He wasn't even in the 18. So they played really well. And it was, we kid, I said this joke earlier today amongst the CSTers. It was really refreshing to see some center backs and midfielders connect passes. And on that note, we end the show. Our thanks to Rob Pierce and Brad Gough for joining us this week. I'm Subs, reminding you to watch your tackles, and we will see you all next week.